xe nó dơ. Xong rồi anh ơi, em gọi cho bạn em mua cái này nè. Em mua 2 cái bánh bao, 1 cái KitKat. Em gọi cho bạn em cái nha. Sale đúng không? Cái đây nữa nè anh. Anh đợi chút. Anh định quay cái lúc. Vậy đó hả?
No, take it out.
Yeah.
Get a mirror there. Get a mirror here too.
Gọi cho bạn em cái đó. Chị nói
Hold this. Hold it. Ridiculous. Alright. Come on. Wait a second, I gotta fix this thing. Yeah. Tell your brother about this, okay? Because sometimes you have to put the key here to do stuff.
Yeah.
So tell him about this thing that it's removable.
Yeah.
There you get water.
Bao giờ mình có một chai.
That's old.
Chai này bữa.
That's old. Here's one.
Mình quên lên chai nước. Mình quên lên đấy luôn. Này nắng kìa.
as the man holding her from behind, just out of Court's view, tried to send her down to her death. But with her body pressed against the iron railing and her hand clenching it as hard as she could, she knew her assailant would have to release the grip on her mouth and use both hands to shove her over. This was the chance she needed, if she could hold her ground long enough for it to happen. Semyon Pirvak removed his hand from the surprisingly strong young woman's mouth to give a big two-handed push against her upper back, but she surprised him as he did this, ducking down and spinning away to her left, missing much of the blow, and then she darted a step back into the room. Pirvak retained a grip on her left arm, ripped her silk shirt sleeve off, then tackled her onto the room service cart, sending food, drinks, silverware, plates, and plate covers in all directions as they fell over the top of it, onto the sofa, and then down to the floor, flipping the coffee table as they impacted with it. They were 3 meters in front of Maxime, who was still positioned near the front door. Zakharova kicked and threw punches, but Pirvak weathered them all, used his weight to pin her amid the mess of food and the dead body of the American man lying there next to them. Ina came over Maxime's headset. "You're making noise!" Maxime shouted to Sem. "Forget the window. We'll shoot her in the head." Then he stepped quickly over to the television, turned it on, and cranked it up to full volume. The woman and Pirvak continued fighting on the floor. Her nosebleed smeared itself around the scene as she threw more knees and more elbows and more fists that did little other than glance off the big 53-year-old. Maxime's strategic brain told him that once she was dead, he'd need to put some of that blood on Ennis's hands to make it look like he attacked her before she shot him. Despite the unexpected turn of events, Akulov had no concerns about his mission itself. Still,
I think I'm the wrong way.
right. The noise coming from the room right now would make a covert exfiltration difficult, to say the least. In his ear, he heard Sorokina telling him to hurry. She was no doubt watching what she took to be a looming debacle on the hidden cameras, and he already dreaded hearing her harp on and on about how tough a target Zakharova had proved to be, and about how Maxime had not listened to her. Enough of this, he thought, as he moved forward, around the body and the coffee table, and began to kneel to help Semyon get the woman pinned down and a gun to her temple or under her chin to end this all. His pistol with the suppressor was too large to holster, so he placed it on the floor behind him as he put his weight on her lower torso, giving Semyon some relief to concentrate on her upper body and arms. Semyon controlled her now with Maxime's help, his forearm smashing down on her mouth to keep her quiet, and his right knee pinning her left arm. The big Russian used his left hand to move his pistol to the side of the muscular woman's head, as she desperately tried to push it away with her one free hand. Maxime snapped at his subordinate. "Do it already!" He punched the woman hard in the thigh, the only part of her body he could easily reach. He raised his fist for another blow, but before he sent it down again, his earpiece suddenly came alive with Ina Sorokina's frantic voice. "Threat! Gun!" This confused him. He could see Zakharova's hands. She didn't have a gun. "Where?" he demanded. "There's a man in the window!" Maxim Akulov rose up on his knees. "Что?" What? Court kicked over the railing, drawing his pistol as he did so. He only had a fraction of a second to take in the entire scene. There was one man in front of him, and the sounds of a fight out of his view on the far end of the food cart on the other side of the sofa. He couldn't see Zoya, so he assumed she was in a fight for her life on the floor in the center of the living room. He raised his weapon, acutely aware he was pointing his pistol in the direction of a thin wall with a family of 6 behind it, the one he'd encountered in the elevator. The one man he could see rising behind the sofa was wearing a room service attendant's coat. He had one hand inside it at his waistband. He seemed to be drawing a weapon. Court sighted in on him quickly, but just as Court began to press the trigger on his VP9, the man spun away with extraordinary speed. Court held fire and tried to track him with his sights. He didn't want to fire and miss. Even hitting the man dead center wouldn't ensure that his round would not overpenetrate and strike someone on the opposite side of the wall. As the man came back around from his spin, Court saw an arm whipping in his direction. He sensed the man throwing something underhanded towards him, so he went from offense to defense, diving away quickly to his right. A black throwing knife churned the air as it whizzed by to his left, a foot from his face. The weapon embedded in the wall behind him, and Court tried to rush his weapon's sights back on his target while he dove through the air. He landed on the kitchen island, rolled once to his right, and came back up in a combat crouch by the sink. ready to finally dispatch this incredibly agile adversary by firing down on him from height and avoiding using the wall with the non-combatants behind it as a backstop. But as soon as Court got his gun on his target, he saw something else in the air, already flying towards him. And before Court could shift into defense again, he felt a sharp sting on the outside of his right biceps. He dropped the pistol, and it fell away down to the floor in the middle of the living room. Court looked down and saw that a throwing knife had sliced him a few inches above the elbow. Blood ran freely down his arm onto the marble tub. The blade hadn't embedded itself. He knew this much, although he had no idea where it had gone. He looked up again and saw that the man who'd injured him had dropped back below the sofa, perhaps to go for another weapon. And to this man's right, a younger, burlier man rose up from behind the cart, and this asshole already had a gun in his hand. Zoya Zakharova finally saw an opportunity, and she knew the only reason she had been afforded this one slim chance was that Court had made it on the scene. She was exhausted from the fight. She hadn't been able to match her opponent's strength or size. He'd had her on her back, and Maxime had been on her legs. But seconds earlier, Maxime had stood up and begun spinning and whipping his body frantically. The man with a knee on her left arm and a gun almost to her head had sensed the movement as well, and then he looked over the sofa. Instantly, he all but forgot about Zoya as he scrambled to get his gun aimed on a target. Zoya used the opportunity to reach out on the floor around her to find anything she could use to strike her enemy with before he could shoot the man risking his life to save hers. Maxim Akulov ignored Ina in his earpiece when she told him Anya was on her way to provide support because Maxim was sure this fight was all but over. He had the man on the kitchen island dead to rights. He raised his pistol from the floor, planning on shooting this maniac dead, and then just shooting Zakharova as well, who was on the floor to his right below Semyon. There would be 3 bodies in the apartment after a very loud and nasty fight. He'd leave his gun in the new man's hands, and authorities would assume the man in the black t-shirt had been an assassin who ultimately killed the guest and her co-worker. Akulov sighted in on his target, but before the weapon snapped in his hand, the man on the island did a back roll with astonishing speed and crashed down into the kitchen out of view on the other side of the island.
Right,
Semyon did fire, however, although Akulov was certain he'd been too slow to hit the stranger. Zoya hadn't been able to prevent the man above her from shooting at Court, but just as he got off a single shot, she scooted back a couple of feet and her fingertips wrapped around a stainless steel plate cover. She arced it through the air with all the force she could muster from the floor, and she struck the man in the arm holding his pistol. A second gunshot cracked, but it went wild. She then flipped onto her stomach and began crawling away madly, knowing she had to keep throwing things at both men to distract them, either until she could get to her weapon, lying somewhere on the floor on the other side of the sofa where she dropped it, or until Court could dispatch the 2 Russians himself. Zoya scrambled almost into the corner, knocked over a floor lamp, then wrapped her left hand around a plate full of food that had skittered off the cart but was still covered in plastic wrap. She frisbeed it back towards the 2 men in front of the sofa, the food spinning off the plate as it sailed. She didn't wait to see if it connected, so eager was she to find more projectiles around her. 47. Court saw Zoya. She was in the corner, 20 feet across the living room, hefting a plate of food and slinging it at the larger of the 2 attackers, who now stood in the middle of the room. It wasn't much offense from Zoya, but he understood she was trying to distract the man while Court got his shit together, and he wanted to take advantage of it. Maxime only had to step around the kitchen island to get the mystery man back in his sights, but after taking 1 step in that direction, a plate with food spinning off it whizzed right at his face. He knocked it away, then batted down a second projectile, this one a metal coffee urn Zakharova had flung his way. He looked back and saw her there, over his right shoulder, but he kept his gun pointed towards the kitchen. This man had been so fast, Maxime knew shifting his fire to the unarmed Zakharova was too dangerous right now. He'd take a plate in the head, but first he was going to move around the right side of the island and pump a half a dozen rounds into Zakharova's would-be savior. Akulov darted around the island and trained his gun on the space there, but his opponent was gone. A trail of blood led around the corner. The wounded man was crawling back into the living room. Semyon was in the process of shifting his aim back to their primary target, the filthy and bleeding woman on the floor. He'd almost lined up on her when she launched to her bare feet, dove onto the hardwood, and rolled forward. He fired high, and then she came up from her roll, standing well within striking distance. She threw an open palm into his jaw, knocking him back a half step, and then she grabbed hold of the hand holding onto the pistol. She tried to flip the man over her hip and wrestle the weapon free, but only for an instant, because quickly he shoved her in the back of her head, sending her flying face first down to the floor, almost all the way to the large open window. As she fell, however, she managed to strip the man's handgun, and it tumbled over the couch and clanged onto the floor by the food cart. Court knelt at the end of the island, not far from the front door, but he knew he couldn't stay here. The man in the room service coat would be coming around through the kitchen to his left right now. Court needed to arm himself and get back in this fight before it was too late. Ducking his head around the corner into the living room, he saw the attacker in the jacket drop his gun over the sofa while fighting with Zoya. It was 15 feet from him, but he'd have to expose himself to both the larger and the smaller man in order to go for it. And then he saw something else. Hidden under the edge of the food cart, a small black pistol lay on the floor. He heard a Russian voice speaking in English coming from the kitchen, steps from where he crouched. Poor valiant hero. When they find your body, you will be remembered as a cold-blooded murderer. At the same moment, the big man saw Court, and Court saw him. The man reached to the small of his back to pull either a gun or a knife. Court knew he had to go for a weapon now, although he would be up against two armed killers in opposite directions. He saw little chance for success, but no chance at all without action. Court threw his body forward and rolled towards the pistol, lying there by the island. His shoulder and his arm rioted in excruciating pain, even through the effects of adrenaline. On his second roll, he snatched up the CZ pistol, then rolled again, across eggs and toast and butter on the floor. He crashed into the food cart, causing it to lurch towards the window. As he raised his gun in the direction of the man at the sofa, who was now brandishing a small semi-automatic pistol, he kicked the second pistol he'd seen lying there, sending it skidding across the floor to where Zoya had just risen into a seated position against the wall.
I mean, well, you can just, like, since you took it out, you can drink it.
And he could see in her eyes that she understood.
Don't leave water, like, in there for a few days and then drink it. Because, like, warm car.
Away from the living room to aim at the target on the other side of the kitchen island. He was giving his back to an armed man so that he could target another armed man.
I used to do that when I got sick.
Zoya, betting his life that she would end the threat behind him while he dealt with the one in front of him. Semyon Purvak had pulled his tiny Sig-Sauer P-238 up from the small of his back and lifted it towards the man 3 meters away on the opposite side of the sofa. He had two targets to choose from, but the decision was an easy one for his experienced tactical brain.
Still in D7?
He knew Zakharova was unarmed. She'd been flinging tableware and food around them after all. So he concentrated on the man who had just come out of a room. He saw the fire was focused on Maxine, not him. So he lined up for an easy shot to the back of his head.
Is the airport this way?
No.
Before Purvak could press the trigger, however, he heard an impossibly loud, unsuppressed gunshot.
That's all Long Island.
He felt a blow to the side of his neck.
But the airport's in Long Island also, right?
Blood spurted up, sealing from his throat, just below the jawline, all over the sofa. He dropped his weapon to press against the wound. He tumbled down to his left, coming to rest over the body of the man he had himself killed moments earlier. Zoya Zakharova had shot him. He understood this much. But as he died, he realized he would never know where she found the gun.
The project will finish in 6 months.
Finally, Court had his weapon up and aimed at the target.
Right?
He'd managed to catch the man in the white server's coat as he swung his gun towards Zakharova, who he clearly knew now had a firearm. The man had his back to the wall in the kitchen. The open window was a good 6 feet off to his left at the head of him. Court shouted at the top of his lungs, "Drop it, asshole!" The would-be assassin's adrenaline began to rise, but he seemed to realize he had no chance against two shooters. He lowered his gun, and Court moved quickly between him and Zoya, who was now behind Court in the corner of the room. He was covering her with his body, and he was...
Well, you really gotta see if it floods.
Yeah.
He shouted to her, "Don't shoot! Don't shoot!" "Why not?" Zoya asked breathlessly, the fight with the big older man having left her utterly wasted. "Overpenetration." The room on the other side of the wall behind the man was where the family of 6 were staying. He said, "I'll fire if he poses a threat." The surviving would-be assassin slicked back hair that had fallen in his face with his free hand. He dropped his gun to the ground, then looked up and smiled at the pair of armed opponents in front of him. Zoya shouted, "Move! I'm shooting this bastard anyway!" "No," Court said. "We've got him. Where's he gonna go?" Court asked. "Yes," the man said in panting English. "Where can I possibly go?" The only sound for a moment was the heavy breathing of the three people left alive. But quickly, with a continued smile towards both Court and Zoya, the man in the server's coat turned to the open window, and then he rushed forward. He dove out head first over the railing, making not a sound as he did so. Zoya's fourth-floor suite was 5 stories above the street. "What the fuck?" Zoya muttered. Court dropped back on his butt on the floor in utter exhaustion, sitting down on the eggs and blood smeared all around.
Là cái
He
ông
lowered his
sếp
pistol as he
luôn
did
luôn
so.
nói trong miệng.
I didn't see that coming.
What the fuck?
Zoya moved
What
to
the
him,
fuck are
but
you
she kept her
doing?
weapon trained on the door to the hallway.
My boss.
There's at least
The odd way.
one more of them
What
out
the
there
fuck?
somewhere.
What the
Court
fuck
blew
are you
out an
doing?
exasperated
He's from
sigh
Singapore?
and hefted his own
Yeah.
weapon with his bloody right arm, and he fell down onto his left elbow. The rapid onset of the fatigue in his body made him worry he was about to faint. Shit.
Drink too much sugary drinks.
Ina
Oh,
Sorokina
yeah.
couldn't believe what she'd
Strictly,
just seen
you
on the
take after
monitor
your
from
kids.
her suite
Your
of the
kids like it,
hall.
you like it.
Maxime had taken a nosedive out of the building. Quickly, she shouted an order through her earpiece to Anya, who was moments away from entering the fray. "Hold! Come back here! I'm at the door. I can... Sam and Maxime are dead. Both hostiles have the door covered. Return." And with that, Ina pulled off her headset and quickly slammed the laptops shut, then shoved them in the 2 backpacks remaining in the room. When Anya made it back up the hall, Ina met her at the door and handed her one of the packs. Anya slipped her Gratch
Crazy
pistol into
motherfucker.
it, and the 2 women headed for the nearby stairwell. Along the way, Ina pulled the fire alarm, hoping the 2 of them could blend in with the crowd of evacuees and escape. Zoya crawled over to Court and hugged him with the arm that wasn't holding the sick pistol on the door. "What's wrong? Are you hurt?" she asked, clearly seeing his utter exhaustion. Not too bad. You?" She looked down at herself. Her bloody nose had soiled her torn white blouse. She was covered in jelly that had broken from a jar. Coffee and juice dripped off her, and bits of egg covered her arms. But she appeared to be
Nó
otherwise
có một cái
fine.
highway từ
She
Bến
said,
Lức là đi Long Thành Đồng
"We have to
Nai.
get out of here. Fast." Court looked at the window the man had just flung himself out of, and he said, "Quickest way is not always the best way." She helped him up to his feet, saw the blood running from his arm. "Tie that off. I'll fix it when we're clear." It took less than a minute for Zoya to change into a black turtleneck and to throw her important belongings into a bag, while Court used the time to stagger into the bathroom and cinch a hand towel around his injury with the belt from Zoya's bathroom. Soon the 2 of them moved carefully into the hallway. The space was already full of people, all of whom they assumed had heard the gunfire, but Court and Zoya were banking on the confusion buying them the time they needed to get out of the building. Court ducked into his room for his backpack, and then they headed off with the crowd. The stairwell was all the way down at the other end of the hallway, so they stepped into the elevator. They stood with several other people coming down from the 5th floor, and made stops along the way down, ending with a car full of guests obeying the fire alarm. As they walked through the lobby, Court holding the towel with his left hand to help stanch the bleeding, Zoya saw the stairwell door open. Several guests came filing out, and then, right in the middle of the thick pack, Zoya saw Ina Sorokina and a younger woman. They both had empty hands, but they carried backpacks slung over their shoulders. Ina and Zoya made eye contact across the crowd, both stopping and staring at each other.
Quay lại
Zoya took
chuyện
Court
kia
by the
rồi.
arm. "1 o'clock, in the blue tub.
In the coffee
Court
I go
followed
to
her
the
eyes.
forgot the vaccine.
Mother, she's one of them. The woman next to her. Looks like they're together." Court said, "Nothing we can do about it." Reluctantly, Zoya admitted to herself that Court was right. She wasn't going to get into a gunfight around 100 people. The 2 of them stepped out the western side doors of the Adlon, with Zoya looking back over her shoulder all the way across the big lobby, where she caught a glimpse of Ina moving with the throngs out the east side into the sunny morning. 48. Court and Zoya made it to his Spandau safe house 30 minutes after leaving the Adlon. He parked his bike in a weed-strewn asphalt lot behind the building. The 2 of them climbed off, and he showed her the way upstairs. He was winded on the climb. The fight had taken too much out of him, and even with the drugs in his system to keep him going, he felt utterly drained. At the top of the stairs, Zoya saw this. What's wrong?
In here,
Court
the
wiped
logo.
yet another
Company.
heavy coat of sweat from his forehead.
Industrial,
It
Yeah.
replenished
Industrial
itself immediately, and he pulled out the key to his apartment.
Not have my company
We'll
here.
talk
Factory
inside.
here.
A moment
I
later,
went there
Zoya
for
stood in the middle
domestic.
of the bare flat, and she looked around at the drab space. Living the good life, I see. I didn't get a fancy suite at the Kempinski. I hear one just became available. She stepped closer to Court, took him by the arm, and looked at the bloody hand towel tied there. Although housekeeping might need a few minutes. She took off the towel and examined the wound. Nice one. Do you have a blowout kit? In the kitchen. Together they stepped into the small kitchen, and here she opened a black bag full of trauma supplies that sat on the counter. While she did this, Court opened the refrigerator and took out 2 bottles of water. While Zoya prepared the items she needed to dress Court's wound, she said, Back in the suite, you wouldn't let me take the shot. Something about over-penetration.
Yeah, what's up?
I saw 4 kids go into the room on the far side of that wall less than an hour earlier. Don't know if they were still there, but I didn't want to shoot one, and I didn't think you did either. Well, I guess it didn't matter in the end. I'd heard Okulov was insane, but I didn't know he thought he could fly. Court eyed her a moment while she began gauzing his biceps. Okulov, as in Maxim Okulov? She nodded. That was him. No kidding, Court said. I've been hearing that name for years. Yeah, he was kind of Russia's you. Well, I wasn't that impressed, to be honest. You didn't get him at his best. Suits me. I love assassins that suck. She tied off the wrap a little higher than Court would have wanted, and then he went to the bathroom and grabbed a roll of toilet paper, then came back and wiped dried blood from her face that had dripped from her nose. Do you have any vodka? She asked. I don't know. Why not? Because it's fucking 10 a.m., Zoya. She laughed at this, and he laughed too, then said, Hey, back there. Did you throw a ham sandwich at one of those guys? I threw whatever the hell I could get my hands on. I think there was a ham and cheese croissant, which means not only were they bad assassins, but they also got my breakfast order wrong. I think I saw an omelet in the air too. Did Russia teach you that shit at spy school? She rolled her eyes. I was throwing the plate, not the food on the plate. Whatever. He looked at her now. It's good to see you. They stepped back into the empty living room.
Cái này nó vẫn
Zoya
thuộc
sat
nhà
on the
bè
small
đúng
wicker
không?
sofa. You always turn up in the strangest places, where I immediately bump into you. You didn't bump into anybody. You've been following me. You saw me? No, Zoya admitted.
Nhà bè rồi đúng
You're invisible when you want to be. But Brewer told you where I was, I
This
assume.
new development?
Yeah.
không? Nhà
Court
bè.
sat down next to her. Even with the sickness and the injuries that racked his body, he wanted to move closer, to press himself against her, to kiss her. But instead, he kept a couple of feet of distance, because he found her body language hard to read. How have you been? He asked. Since you shot me, you mean? Court had indeed shot Zoya in the hip months earlier in Scotland, the instant after Zoya shot Brewer because she thought Brewer was about to shoot Court. With extreme understatement, he said, Yeah, that was a mess. He rubbed his forehead. Perspiration dripped to the floor. Zoya softened a little. Something is not right with you. Are you sick?
Sick.
Picked up a little infection. The fever comes and goes. I'll be fine in a couple of days. She looked at him like she didn't believe him, then said, You need to get to Templeton 3 in Maryland. They'll patch you up. Then Henry will come yank you out of your hospital bed and throw you back out to the wolves. Court sniffed out a tired little laugh. That kind of sounds like something he might do, he added. Hey, sorry about your friend. What friend? Ennis. She looked at him with confusion. He wasn't a friend. He was my contact at Shrek. Okay, Court said, and Zoya cocked her head now. What? I mean,
What?
last night at dinner, it kind of looked like you guys were getting along. Zoya pushed a long strand of dark hair back behind an ear. I was working him. Okay. I was. Court nodded now, took another gulp of water, and looked away. When he did not speak, she said, Enes was my only route up the food chain at Shrike. He was also a gossipy fool, if you want my opinion. Court said nothing. Zoya cocked her head again, and a little smile grew. You're jealous? Now he turned away, but affected a laugh. Yeah, that's it, he said, with poorly sold sarcasm. That's hilarious. She said this with a little smile, and then her smile went away. It seemed every time Court encountered Zoya Zakharova, there was both affection and mistrust in the air. So far, on their previous meetings, he'd been able to eliminate the mistrust over time, but he worried this was getting harder and harder to do. Shooting her hadn't helped, but that wasn't the only rift between them. Zoya replied, We aren't good, you and I. I know, he responded, though in truth, her words saddened him. But, she added, you saved my life back there. Not for the first time either.
This traffic is just getting worse.
Court thought back to the mad battle in the hotel suite, running it quickly through his mind like an organized after-action report. Well, you shot the big dude, and the little dude did a header out the window. I'm not sure I did anything more than create a diversion. Yeah, well, you are my walking, talking flashbang grenade. She smiled at him again, squeezed his good arm. It's good to see you too. Court's right arm hurt, but his left shoulder burned. He was exhausted and feverish, but this small moment of human interaction made him the happiest he'd been in months, since the last time the two of them shared a tender moment. He knew what this meant, of course. It meant he was in love with her, and he worried still that it would be his undoing. He shook his head to clear these thoughts away, and she looked at him strangely, wondering what must have been going on in his mind. But before she could ask, he got back to business. Anyway, you're out now. This op is over. Oh, great. This is where you start telling me what to do, isn't it? No, She shook her head. It's not over. Not even close. What do you mean? You're blown. I'm blown at Shrike, but I can't leave Berlin yet. Something is about to happen. Yeah, you're about to get shot by Russian assassins. Not with you watching my back. Court shook his head. This was an insane argument. I've got assholes running around Berlin trying to kill me too, Zoya. Sticking around till one of us gets whacked is the dumbest thing imaginable. So, you're leaving town? Court took a few slow breaths. No, Hanley needs me to. Right, she interrupted. I can't handle it here, but you can. Court didn't know what to say. He was trying to keep her safe, but she was taking it to mean he was trying to control her, to hold her to a different standard than he held himself to. He changed the subject. What do you mean, something is about to happen? Zoya didn't want to change the subject. This was clear from the expression on her face, even to Court. But after a moment, she said, Enes said the company's contract with their client will end. The Germans will be handed the intel they needed to put EU sanctions back on Iran. To this, Court shrugged. Okay, great. So Shrike are the good guys. Why do we need to get in the middle of that? Zoya shook her head. But that's not what this is all about. Shrike Group is running a scam. They're trying to set the Iranian embassy up to take the fall for some sort of future terror attack by Quds Force. Enes told me this morning before he died. Court nodded at this. I have to talk to Hanley. No, we have to talk to Hanley. And then we have to find Hazmi Raza, the Quds Force cell commander here in Berlin. But Court wasn't having it. The Russians know you're here. And if there aren't more than the two we killed already looking for you, and the two you saw in the lobby of the Adlon, you can bet there will be a shit ton more in town by nightfall. You know I'm right. You are helping the agency. You are jeopardizing this mission by staying here. She put her head in her hands, and Court saw that she understood. Court said, I'll take over the op. Do you have any sort of plan? Zoya asked. Court shrugged. Not really. I guess I'll try to find this Mirza asshole. Enes said Dittenhofer is the one surveilling the Mirza operation, remotely. She's in one of his phones. She can hear his conversations. Court nodded, resolute now. Then I have a plan. I'm going to find Annika Dittenhofer, shake her down for the intel that Hanley needs about Shrike, and get her to lead me to Mirza. And what are you going to do about Mirza? I'm not going to throw a ham sandwich at him, I can promise you that. Zoya rolled her eyes. Court said, I'm going to kill him. And then I'm getting the fuck out of here myself before the dickheads from yesterday track me down again. She said, that's a big operation for a sick man with a wounded right arm and a fucked up left shoulder. I appreciate your confidence. Zoya smiled a little now. You'll need support in the field. If not me, you'll need to get Henry to link you up with Berlin Station. Court looked at her like she was crazy. Why would I do that? The station is burned to Shrike Group. Zoya turned to face him. What are you talking about? Power slave. It was quiet in the empty apartment for several seconds.
It's too far.
I'm supposed to know what that
I think
means.
maybe the
Jesus.
we'll
Court
see
understood.
before
Brewer and
it's
Hanley didn't
better.
tell you.
I know, but
Because they
it's-
didn't want
the
you
more
to know
developed,
you were
the worse
working
traffic's gonna get.
Berlin.
Yeah.
Then
When she shrugged, he said,
that road's hard to
Power
make
Slave
wide.
is a tool stolen from NSA, a biometric database containing all American intelligence personnel linked to a program that can identify them on camera feeds. Sort of
Still,
a
this
master
is like
key
perfect
to
traffic. It's
expose
not gonna be
spooks and
perfect. It's getting
operators
worse
in
and
the
worse
field.
every year.
It was created by an NSA official named Clark Drummond, who worked directly for Dittenhofer, and it's been up and running for most of a year for Shrike here in Berlin. Zoya looked up to the ceiling. I knew nothing about this. They told me I'd have support if Moscow found me. And when I told Brewer that Moscow found me, she told me to sit tight. Court cocked his head. You told Brewer that Moscow found you here? She didn't say anything to me about that. Zoya put her head back against the wall and closed her eyes. That's Brewer for you. You're right. Even without what happened today, I'm burned here as an asset to Shrike Group. You'd just make it more dangerous for me if you stayed, not less. The Russians aren't targeting me. He amended that. Well, they aren't targeting me like they're targeting you. Zoya didn't argue the point, but she did ask, what about Hightower? Why isn't he here helping us? Because he's in a jail cell in Caracas. She was surprised by this. What's he doing there? Not a whole lot would be my guess. Sabine has him. At El Ecuador prison? How did you know? I know a little about Venezuela. I did a thing there once. She shrugged. Once or twice. Court knew better than to ask. She wouldn't say, and he really didn't want to know. She surprised him with her next comment. If I could get him out, would he be able to help you? Court nodded. Well, sure. I could use his support here, especially if anything kicks off with the Iranians. But I don't know how you're going to be able to. I know some people. She smiled a little. More importantly, some people know me. I'll call Matt and see if he'll approve it. Court shook his head adamantly. With Matt, often it's better to ask forgiveness than to ask permission. The Russian brunette nodded thoughtfully. That makes sense. I'll just disappear for a couple of days. I've got access to an agency account in Cyprus. It's not a ton, but I could probably get the money I need to go down and get Hightower. Court said, and I have access to an agency account in Antigua. I'll give you the account and routing numbers.
BYD.
He added, but the most important thing is that you leave here now. They exchanged contact information, and Court passed over his banking info. It wasn't a CIA account. In truth, it was his own personal money. But he'd amassed a small fortune there in his years as a freelance assassin, and he wanted Zoya to have all the resources she needed. When this was done, both of them rose, each helping each other out. As they stood face to face, close for the first time, Zoya's expression turned even more
lớp chắc
serious.
cũng phải 10 năm
What
nữa.
is it? Court asked, concerned. Zoya did not respond.
It's out there.
Instead, she grabbed him by the back of the neck and kissed him hard in the mouth. He kissed her back, and they lingered close for a moment, wrapped in the silence of the morning. Finally, she backed away half a step. Court didn't know what to say.
Is this
He
your
felt
land or
like
your
they
friend's
allowed
land?
him, Zoya. She repeated herself from earlier.
Your friend's land?
Because
We're not
Oh, you want to
good,
sell it?
you and I.
yeah, no, he is a real estate company.
Real,
He worked
realtor.
in last my company, previous
She
my
said,
company.
But everything you do, Court, you do it
I
with
think
the best intentions.
Later it will
You're
come
not
to
perfect. Sometimes you're wrong. Sometimes you're so incredibly wrong you fuck things up royally.
này
But I've
cũng
never
phát
met
triển
anyone
ra.
in my life other than my
Yeah,
late
10
brother,
years
who is
later
such
thì
a fundamentally good person. Court didn't think he was all that great, but he appreciated her saying
traffic was bad.
they embraced
Yeah.
him.
They need a
He
metro
was
down here.
careful to keep his
Yes.
new injury out of her grasp as he did so. Court shook away the soft stuff and got back to business.
Vinh rất là
Get out of here.
is amazing.
If you can get Zach, send him this way. If you can't, then don't worry about it. I've made it this far on my own. Also, dump your phone. And remember about Hanley. You can trust him to do what's best for the USA, but you can't trust him to tell you the truth. About anything. He manipulates people like us into doing some crazy shit, and I think you need to try to get out of the crazy shit business. Look who's talking, she said with a little laugh. Yeah, Court responded, and he motioned to his body with a wave of his hand. Look who's talking. He was wounded and sick, and he looked like death warmed over. You make a good point, Zoya said.
Oh, he's
She
coming
kissed
here
him
today?
one more time,
He will
then
come
headed
here,
for the
but
door.
waited him.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
49.
Oh.
Court dialed a number just minutes after Zoya left his little apartment. It was only 5 a.m. DC time, but he didn't care. Hanley answered, and it was clear he was wide awake. That you? Court said, Violator, Iden Alpha, X-Ray Mike. Skip it, it's you.
You gotta
I'm
see
getting
what it looks
reports
like when it
from the
rains.
embassy about more gunplay.
This thing's probably underwater when it rains.
Let me see here. Maybe the comedy there. Let's go to the...
He's on a plane out of here. She didn't tell me where, and I didn't ask. She dumped her phone so she can't be tracked. Court needed Zoya off Hanley's radar for a while, for her safety, and also so she could retrieve Hightower and put him back into play.
Việt Thịnh
He
Lan.
went on to tell the
Em
DEA
biết
that
cái
Zoya's
tên của
thoughts
nó có
that
phải là
Short
Việt
Group
Thịnh
was
không?
creating false linkage between a Cud cell operative and the Iranian embassy.
Over here.
Sighed loudly.
So we're here đi.
What's our next plan? Berlin Station is burned by power supply. Court replied, I'm going to go find out and I'm going to get her.
Chạy tới chạy lui.
How are you going to get her to? I'll give her 5 seconds to talk, and then I'll start breaking bones. Violator, you are not healthy enough to. I'm fine. I've been getting a little treatment. Hanley paused a minute, but not for long.
Chị Lộc có ý định là mua đất không mà Lộc có mắc tay nè.
Solid copy, boss. By the way, I guess congratulations are in order. For what? General Rajavi. He put a warhead on his forehead this morning. Well done. Yeah, but this wasn't just a regular drone hit. We knew there would be implications. The president wanted the motherfucker dead, so I killed the motherfucker. But I...
Sorry.
would be the time to rest. A good time for the people to do something that would need it.
Đấy hả? Đang ở Long An nè.
À vậy hả?
Ê, nó này.
Dưới nè.
Nhưng mà chắc là chuyển hướng xuống Long Thành. Trên này xa với lại buồn lắm.
Rồi có hả? Vậy hả?
Kiểu thì cái khu này nó cũng kiểu như đang quy hoạch đấy thì cũng nhưng mà kiểu chắc cầu 10 năm nữa mới phát triển ấy.
Nên hiểu không thấy cái nói chung cái tỉnh
Ừ.
nó không đi. Tại vì nó mà nó lấy gì nhà nó rồi nó đâu có vô với tài sản gì cả. Sài Gòn nó không có cố với này lấy phát triển không. Nhưng mà thấy dự án đường xa sao?
Đường nó cũng chưa có ok lắm, kiểu đường nó nhỏ mà nó cũng chưa không, đường thì đi vẫn được nhưng mà kiểu là chưa có ok lắm.
Trải nhựa là hết rồi.
Trải nhựa hết.
Nó làm gì vậy? Nói chung có gì là đúng lắm.
Đúng rồi. Đúng. Thấy xa quá nên là bạn tới rồi.
Nói chuyện đây.
Chút gọi nha. Đây đúng không? Ok. Vậy đợi chị xuống nhé. Anh có xuống với em không? Hay là
No, I'll share.
Chị đi với em, chị xuống với em coi.
Take pictures and stuff.
Dạ.
So I'm gonna let you first, and then we're gonna breakfast. Follow your arms.
Electric car here. The separated from last car.
Straighten it out. Again, I'm gonna have you practice a little bit. Just go forward and I'm gonna have you.
Nhưng mà hình như nãy em thấy nó có cái signal cho mình đúng không?
Huh?
Because normally they have the signal for us, right? For safety.
No. It's just like if there's a sensor, if there's like something back there.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna have you do this. I'm gonna have you do this. Just have you put it in the drive. Hit the. Look, I'm gonna have you hit the brake.
Yeah.
Put in the drive.
Yeah.
And I'm just. 3 homers, what the fuck? Let's go.
And now Trevor McGill, all-star closer for tonight. And McGill with a high fastball catches the top of the zone. MVP chance rained down to be on his way to his third this year, to be his fourth overall.
All of a sudden, not lunging, just taking the. It's like the switch is quick.
Oh, he got the call on the big curve. And the count is ball and 2 strikes. He's 6'8" Trevor McGill against a larger-than-life player in Shohei Ohtani. Both were all-stars National League this season. 1-2 the count. Ohtani, did he? Both were all-stars National League this season. 1-2 the count. Ohtani, did he? Ohtani! Ohtani has done it again! His third home run! Take a bow, Shohei Ohtani. An all-time game for an all-time player. 3 homers. He makes it 5-0. And I think we might be looking at the NLCS MVP. And now Betts goes deep to center. Frelick at the track makes a catch just shy of the wall. 1-2 the count. Ohtani, did he? Ohtani! Ohtani has done it again! His 3rd home run! Take a bow, Shohei Ohtani. 2 strikes, and this is where he goes, right? That ball's a little down, a little outer half. 114 off the bat, and this one only 427.
It's the opposite way.
Yeah. With all the discussion about why would you, it's a no-brainer for a book.
Conspiracy theorists tell us all the time that there's AI living amongst us right now. Nonsense. Until right now.
It's hard to believe it. Soaring into the Los Angeles night.
That's Tony Ronnie that we know when it's goes middle, but the way the hand stayed inside the ball didn't come around it.
Instead of being over and in front of the ball. I mean,
The only way to hit a ball like that is to back it up.
he's like completely back in one swing.
2-2 the count on Will Smith. And McGill with the strikeout to end.
French, you know how incorrigible you and I would be if we had that talent.